Peace and blessings, fam. Welcome to Ijikadi African Martial Arts. I'm super excited because we have a panel of guests today, all stars, in my opinion. So, some of these names you're familiar with. There may be some folks that you're meeting for the very first time. Two of our guests are returning guests. All right, our dear Baba Mfriti, Mdishi Khalil Masi, and of course Dr. Kamal Rashid. Both of these guests have been on our platform before, so you may be familiar with them, seen their faces, but I still want our entire panel to introduce themselves so you can get to know who they are. Again, we're just here to highlight our African and African diaspora martial arts. So let's go ahead and get started. Baba, can we get started with you, please?
Which Baba are you talking to?
Eldest first.
Yes, eldest first. Yes, sir.
Let's go to the queen first, but if you put it on the, I'm the elder. Okay, so my name is Khalil Masi. All right, I'm the son of Mfudishi Masi. I'm known as Mrithi Mfudishi Khalil Masi, but and in the Yoruba tradition, I'm known as Awo Shangalari Otunde Karade Fukoyede. All these long names I have.
That's awesome, brother. Awesome, Baba. Thank you so much. All right, going down there to Dr. Rashid, brother. Can you just introduce yourself, please?
So greetings, everyone. My name is Kamal Rashid. I'm a professor, university professor in Chicago in the Afro-Diaspora Martial Arts. I'm a capoeira instructor with Usmalan Jiu-Jitsu Toro. I'm also a master instructor, professor with the 52 Blocks Federation. And I'm also a maestro, a full instructor of El Huevo de Mani and Coco Ballet, which are the Afro-Diasporan arts of Cuba and Puerto Rico. So good evening, everybody. Well, greetings, everybody.
All right. And last but not least, our dear sister, please introduce yourself for our audience.
Good morning, good day, good evening, bon dia, boa tarde, boa noite, bonjour à tout le monde. I am Contra-Mesa Amazonas, formerly and belovedly known as such. My mom and my daddy has named me Jana Burton, but most people around the world know me as Contra-Mesa Amazonas. I am Contra-Mesa here. I have Grupo Liberdade de Capoeira and the Afro-Brazilian Arts and Education Academy here in New Jersey, traveling the world with the arts and the knowledge and the traditions. And also I am also Coach Amazonas of the Elijah Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy here as well in New Jersey.
Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing, sister. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for that introduction. So we're here today to really talk about the future of African martial arts and, kind of where we go from here. What are some of the challenges that we face and what are some goals and aspirations that you all see and opportunities that you see for us in the future. So I kind of want to open the floor with just a little bit of a question. I always ask all of our guests this, kind of what got you into, African or African diaspora martial arts specifically, because most of us typically come, into martial arts through Asian martial arts, right? Whether Kung Fu, karate, Taekwondo, something along those lines. And so what really motivated you to kind of get into the African, and African-centered martial arts? And, I just kind of want to briefly go around just to give our audience a perspective as far as where you come from. And then some of you all touched on it, but if you can name kind of the system or method of African martial arts or Alkebulan Montu that you practice, right? What methods or styles of African martial arts do you study?
Let's start with the queen again. Let's start with the queen this time.
That's right.
My father, Leonard Burton, was my judo teacher. And so to say when I started, I never knew I was starting or made a commitment per se. It was just a lot of curiosity. How could I figure not to get thrown across the living room floor? It was definitely a concern. Knowing how to wrestle with my brothers and not knowing we were formally training before we actually went to the dojo. Yeah. So we started in judo, but that also mixed us into jiu-jitsu as children. And I found capoeira, as many people have as an adult, but by watching movies. But there weren't classes that were really around during the time. I know I look young, but again, at the time there weren't classes everywhere in the United States. So this year they are celebrating 50 years of capoeira in the United States. But I stumbled upon it a few moons ago as in a batizado, which is the graduation adult promotion at St. Peter's College that my teacher was hosting. And I stumbled upon this. I couldn't imagine this is happening in person.
Yeah.
And then they offered a free class, and then I never stopped. So that's how I was introduced into the African martial arts, but I in terms of physically taking classes, but you always knew they were around. You knew that we had influence. You could see the way that Bruce Lee would walk and say, yeah, he walked kind of like a brother.
He had a certain swag to him. He had a certain swag.
So it had a different kind of element. And so it just piqued my curiosity to start to figure out how to become a practitioner. I did study a little bit of Kupingani with the brothers here in Newark. And that was very interesting to me, and just being able to keep the flow and understanding of who we are as Africans and who we are as Africans in the United States. To know that I am a free Afrikan was very important, to know that the psychology and sociology that we were dealing with as Africans in the United States was something that was going to be continued and taught. But I continue to find a love and admiration for the liberation that was guided through the capoeiristas in Brazil. And being a linguistic person, as you can hear, I greeted you in 3 different languages. Is something that was interesting to me. So I brought those languages into my life as a pillar, and continue to build on those that way.
That's phenomenal, sister. Now I got some follow-up questions, because I can't just let that go, and I'm sure our audience is kind of wondering as well, some of these questions. So for me, like, hearing you speak, like, there's a certain political consciousness that is there as well, right? And there's a certain realization of who you are as an African woman. And so my question would be, did that influence you towards the study of African diaspora martial arts? Presumably it did, but I'm curious, did that influence you towards that? Is the first question. And then second question would be, what are the languages that you speak? Because I'm not familiar with them.
It's okay. Yes, as a Black woman now, it definitely influenced, but as a Black child, a Black young girl, when you're one of many, and didn't really realize that was one of the few or only females in class. This is just the things we did. And it was a way of life. So I continue to be influenced by Africanism, but I didn't necessarily see the gender dynamics, because that's just something how we behaved and how you survived. But as I stumbled upon capoeira and realized that there was, I knew there was another language going on, but I understand there was a political confines that were put upon Brazilians. The African free people were brought to the slave trade in Brazil, and through capoeira they found freedom. Yeah. And freedom of the mind, through politics and other jargons as well. But it's through the African culture that drew me to it. So that influenced my desire to improve my Portuguese. My grandmother is from Cape Verde, Africa. And so that is where my Portuguese started and has continued to grow. I also speak French. Because Africans, we speak a little bit of everything. I studied that and to become proficient as well. There's Spanish. There's also some sign language that's rusty. But of course, there's English and patois, because, now go on, because trust me, man, we better come from Barbados,
That's outstanding. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. So we'll go in reverse order here. Dr. Rashid, you can give us a little bit of that of your background in the African martial arts, and kind of what inspired you to kind of go down that path a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and much like Sister Contramestra, my own journey in these arts was also informed by certainly the political consciousness of the environment that I was in, as well as my own developing political consciousness back in the 90s. Probably back in the mid-90s, I became exposed to Capoeira theory. Capoeira theory, for those that are familiar, is a social theory that was developed by Dr. Maulana Karenga and was subsequently popularized in the United States, both by the US organization, but also by an organization called the Congress of African People, and numerous other organizations, which were either Capoeira formations, that is, groups that were engaged in the study of Capoeira, or organizations that had imbibed and used Capoeira as a basis whereby they attempted to understand what it meant to be African. Capoeira essentially is a social theory, but one of the core elements of Capoeira is a recognition of the importance of our culture as an instrument of our liberation. Within Capoeira, there's a core contention, and I was exposed to this idea many years ago, and that core contention goes as follows: that the core crisis and challenge in Black life is the cultural crisis and challenge. Again, the core crisis and challenge in Black life is the cultural crisis and challenge. And so this idea of culture as a problem, that is, that culture as an instrument of oppression, but also culture, as Omar Cabral would argue, was also a means towards liberation. And so for me, once I, embraced this idea, it began to delineate a path, right? And so I began right around the same time I was being exposed to these ideas. I was also studying Asian martial arts. But of course, over time, I realized this is cool, but the idea of studying an African art became more and more important to me. Yes. And there was a day I was at this community center. This is back when I was an undergrad in Urbana-Champaign at the University of Illinois. And I was talking to a dear friend of mine, and he had mentioned capoeira, and I think he did the Jenga. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. This dance that he's doing. And it seems like also in that same conversation, there was another brother who also mentioned shackled hands. Again, these are all Chicago folks, right?
Yes,
a lot of shackled hands folks, folks who knew shackled hands in the city. So that was the thing that planted a seed. And it was in the late 90s where that seed would begin to germinate. The challenge that I had is that there was a capoeira class nearby on the south side of Chicago. So this is when I'm back in the city after undergrad. But I couldn't get to it because the class was on the same day that I worked. And so I deferred my study of capoeira to the future. And it wasn't really until about 7 years later, I was living in St. Louis, and I was finally able to study. In fact, actually before that, let me go back up a little bit. A year before that, actually, I reached out to Hati Kalindi Yi. And he was doing a camp at that time. He was doing these camps in Michigan. Yep. And when I drove up to Michigan from Central Illinois all the way up to Michigan for this camp, and it's there that I met Hati Kalindi. I also met Mestre Pertuvelo and a few other folks. And so that was probably really the beginning of my path. And so later on, when I moved to St. Louis, I started studying capoeira with a brother named Toboho, who was with the group Toboho with the group Coraju Ouro. And so capoeira was really my beginning. And now these days I do capoeira. So the style of capoeira we do is called Capoeira Angola de Salpinto Grande. So it's a style of capoeira from Rio de Janeiro. Yeah. And so my Mestre Pertuvelo was actually the first capoeira mestre I met. So it's kind of interesting that many, many years later, he and I would reconnect and I would be a student. But also one of the things that was important to me in that lacuna, that period between the early 90s or the late 90s rather, and the mid to late 2000s when I began to really study capoeira consistently, I didn't have access to instruction. And so what I did is I just studied as much as I could about the history of these arts. And it was from that I began to understand there was really a world of these, of not only African, but also Afro-diaspora martial arts. That's right. And so for me, capoeira was always the portal. So I was desirous of entering that portal, but I saw capoeira as the most expedient means to engage tradition, to enter into this tradition. And so I was very fortunate that having done capoeira for a number of years, right around the time of COVID, I was able to connect with Professor Mo, and even though I had been exposed to 52 Blacks, in fact, my initial direct exposure to 52 goes back to the late 2000s at one of Hati Kalindi's conferences in Detroit. Even though I read about the art prior to then, my direct exposure to people who were teaching the art was then. But it wasn't really until until when I hooked up with Professor Mo during the pandemic that the light of 52 was really kept on, because again I had encountered for different folks to show me some things, but Professor Mo was really the key in terms of my understanding and practice of that art. And right around that same time, I also was able to connect with my Mani and Kokopali, Maestro Miguel Quijano. And it was very interesting how it happened. It was a post on Facebook, and he was starting a class. It's interesting. Let me reach out to this guy, right? And it was actually very much like my initial communication with Professor Mo. I saw a flyer on Facebook and I reached out, and it was like this back and forth, like these questions, people trying to fill you out.
Yeah, exactly.
And what was helpful in all these instances, I'm a student of capoeira, and I'm not like some capoeira renegade. Like, I'm a capoeira student. I have a teacher. I'm a part of a group. I teach capoeira. So I'm a person that has a presence, a foot, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm firmly rooted in our combative traditions. And so I think that helped them understand that I was a serious practitioner and a serious student. And so it was through that connection I was able to connect with Maestro Miguel Quijano, who has his own group called Raíces Profundas, through which he teaches Coco Ballet, which is an Afro-Puerto Rican stick and blade art, which also also entails the Afro-Puerto Rican version of Kalinda, as well as the Mani. And so those are really the main four styles for me, capoeira, particularly capoeira Angola, which is up in Granja, the capoeira Rio, 52 Blocks via the 52 Blocks Federation, El Juego de Mani from Cuba, and Coco Ballet, which includes Kalinda from Puerto Rico.
That is amazing, brother. That is amazing. I'm just so humbled by so much experience. Like I'm like a baby in here. So, Baba Khalil Masi, as well, sir. I'd like to hear your thoughts as well and background. I know it started with your father, as you mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah. Well, my origins start with my father's origins. He was one of the co-founders of the Pan-African Martial Arts Federation with Nganga Fadishi Talona. And these are two brothers who got together in the 60s to do study and research on the African contribution, or the Black contribution to the martial arts, not just Africa, but worldwide, whatever style or system or tradition or culture our people were in and how we influenced it. So that was the beginning of my introduction into this world and into that circle of men and women who were doing this research and, studying African dance, like Mama Zul Latif, who, was teaching us the warrior dances, the male dances, and such forth, and how that interplayed into the martial arts. My father also worked with Baba Chuck Davis, with Jalon Vieira, and other people like that. Of course, Hati Kalindi and all these people. So just a wide circle of people coming together to do this exploration on our history of males and females in the warrior tradition. So that's the long short of it. My own personal journey has been, again, training within that circle of people, spending time in the Academy of Messi Granja and around the Capoeira community, spending time also studying the works of, on the literary sense of Dr. Fouquial and Robert Farris Thompson, and understanding it from that aspect. Also as a Babalao and someone initiated into the Bakongo practice, studying it from the spiritual tradition and that such forth too. So it's like been a total journey, just being in a circle of people absorbing knowledge and information. But I would point also to the spiritual aspect of it, particularly since I am an initiated priest. And this is something that's in our DNA, something that's in our spirit, in our genetic memory. And I can point to my specific bloodline, as my father is a descendant of the Maroons of Jamaica. And it's interesting how he, coming from that history and that tradition, through his forefathers and foremothers, how he ended up in Newark, New Jersey, and became part of the Newark Rebellion generations later, where you can look at Newark, New Jersey as a Quilombo community in itself, fighting those same struggles, and how the people in Newark, New Jersey came together for our liberation and was at the forefront of our liberation politically and grassroots. And that's where Kupigan and Gumi was born eventually. Originally, when he was working with Amiri Baraka during the Black Arts Movement, when they were integrating music and dance and art and culture together with modern arts and practices. And in his mind, it was like, okay, so what is the Black man's contribution? And then he was also spurred further onward by some of his teachers, and some of them in the Asian martial arts, like Alan Lee, Grandmaster Alan Lee, Dr. Momiji, who gave him specific information about the origins of Asian martial arts.
Alan Lee was he's a Wing Chun guy in New York, right? Was that
Alan Lee? No, he's more. He's
who is he?
Say it again.
I'm sorry, Bob. Who's Alan Lee?
He's Alan Lee is a kung fu teacher, Qigong, Shaolin, various other different styles of martial arts, internal and such for Tai Chi, Qigong. So, but they gave him early pointing into Asia, into studying, particularly into Southeast Asia under Dr. Momji, to study the traditions and systems that came out of that area of the Black Aboriginals who were indigenous there.
You know, I'm hearing a common thread that everyone's sharing, and I think it's like that for all of us, myself included. And then the common thread, of course, is capoeira, right? The beauty of capoeira. And so, you know, and I'm not sure. I think I don't know how old everybody is, but I'm 43, and I remember growing up hearing about capoeira, and I'm, you know, growing up, of course, in the Asian martial arts. And I think this may be a similar experience to many of us who grow up, no matter what generation. But when I saw capoeira, it looked like a dance to me, right? And I'm like, oh, that'll never work. You know what I mean? This is what I'm thinking, right? Oh, this will never work. You know, I would never study, you know, like in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to study capoeira because, you know, it's, I want to learn how to box, or I want to learn how to, you know, do Muay Thai. Nowadays, it's Muay Thai and MMA, right? But, you know, back in the days, like, I just rather learn how to box or wrestle or something like that. And so what do you say to people who look at, you know, and my brother, my brother out in California would always call it like cardio capoeira, you know what I mean? My brother Roz Fletcher, and he calls it that. But what do you say to people who look at capoeira and say, oh, it's just dancing or it's not practical? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, no, you go first.
Let me take this one, because I have learned from many different masters, many different teachers, students, because it's experience. So I learn. And there was a period of time where people would say in their explanation of what is capoeira, they would say capoeira is an Afro-Brazilian martial art, or some people skip the Afro, and they'll say it's martial art that was disguised as a dance. And I think that was for communicative purposes, to try to give people an understanding that there's rhythm that is involved in how Africans hid conversation through music. And that's deep to have in a first level conversation. You can have that with my children's students, and they'll take you all the way through there. But sometimes we don't have the patience to listen to that. So we try to snip it into this little cookie cutter answer. However, at the time, for us to gather as African people was illegal. And at the time, to dance together was illegal. So you can't do something illegal disguised as being illegal.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. So we've learned to evolve from that definition, but still some of us are stuck with those words, or that verb is just too lack of studying.
Yeah.
Not a problem, because that's why we have panel discussions and we have books now. And even the internet can help us as well. But moving forward, some of the things that I have conversation, because again, I'm mixing many different types of martial arts also outside of the African diaspora or inside of the African diaspora, because we were there also, but we won't have to talk about the genetics of these things. We're just going to talk about capoeira right now. Yeah. But to answer that question, some people are still to this date have a problem or have a concern, not sure, being able to really see understand what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And so in that conversation, this is why I think that we have named it or called it disguised as a dance. So you might not see or know that a sweep is a sweep, or a sweep is really just designed to get me closer to you so that I can knock you off your block. Or if I have shackled hands, I need to use more of a foot pattern that is not linear, because things that the other martial arts that were Africans were attacked with at the time were more linear. So why would I attack linear with linear? Right. You know, and so the circular movements of capoeira, again, are not necessarily as direct. And again, some would say because in the diaspora, as we teach now, in the academy phase that we have now, where things are legal and people can sue you, we have to realize that there's a level of the danger that has to be, not to say minimized, but at least controlled.
Yeah. When
I came up in capoeira, and I'm still coming up in capoeira as a young person, because I say I'm 25 again.
I'm not gonna ask your age, sister.
Yes,
I'm not gonna ask your age.
You know, the thing is that, you know, you have to still recognize that in the question and answer, you ask me many questions and I have many ways that I can answer. I choose to be a nice person. And in that process, I'm going to choose something that, again, that is not going to get me sued sometimes, unless I'm in a competition. Like, there's still rule sets. So your friend, your brother, Ross Fletcher, he has approached me also. You can still leave this in the recording. I have no problem with any of that anyway. Cardio Capoeira Masteries, and who he talks to might be. So
yeah,
I hang out with, choose to be nice people. Because not just necessarily only in the dark rooms or the small side rooms we have this conversation, but there's a conversation for self-defense. There's a conversation that we have for training. There's a conversation that we'll have for teaching, or there's a conversation we'll have for learning. There's a conversation for sparring. There's levels of conversation, because I'm not sure about you, but the way that I respond to my mother is not how I respond to my daughter. The way that I respond to my sister is not how I even respond to my aunt. And the same thing with men as well. How I speak to my man is not how I'm talking to my father.
that's right.
There's a conversation. So there's levels of conversation, levels of responses. So maybe he's only seen people who have not had many sides of the conversation, but only show one side of their conversation.
Yeah, and I was just using, again, I'm not putting them out there. I'm just as an example that came to mind because he had mentioned cardio capoeira. But there's many people that feel that way, right? That feel like, oh, you know, it's the circular movements. That a lot of folks do feel that way, right? They think of it as a dance, you know, and so I don't know how to combat that, or how do we, you know, educate folks on that.
Well, there's a famous martial artist, I believe, once said, "They never give a sword to a man who can't dance." I'll just leave that right there. However you want to look at it, we're talking about footwork, really. So people using the term dance as a fancy term for footwork, all right? And when you talk about capoeira, you're talking about footwork, amongst a bunch of other things when we're talking about martial principles, all right? And you have to have footwork, because you're not going to have to stand stationary in any type of combat situation for the most part, unless you're locked into a position. The more proficient forms of martial arts in the world today are based on footwork, all right? Improvisational footwork, boxing, wrestling, Muay Thai, left way, MMA. So now we can talk about that in the context of just in terms of just its functionality purpose. But in terms of capoeira, what is capoeira? Capoeira is Ngolo, right? Ngolo transformed into various martial arts forms that we know are so-called effective. So-called boxing, or what we call black boxing, or what someone, Professor Charles Andrew Dawson would call black boxing, is he would say is capoeira standing upright. Again, it's using Ngolo. Wrestling has Ngolo in it. Okay, Machete has Ngolo, Kalinda has Ngolo, Damier has Ngolo. It's how you apply it. You know, so we can have these conversations, and you know, a lot of martial artists like to sit around and theorize. You know, and martial arts is all theory, because even tried and tested systems and techniques and styles still a theory until we see the actual person use them in the situation. I would say, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Baba. Just for the audience, you mentioned Ngolo. Can you help our audience, just for those that aren't familiar with that terminology? What is Ngolo for our audience?
Well, you have Ngolo, the combat tradition coming out of the Congo, which most people are familiar with hearing. But then you have Ngolo, which is energy, okay? Like Ashe, like Chi, Prana, all of that, and how it manifests in the physical form in combat as well. And Ngolo is also a way of movement in combat, in psychology, in terms of martial combat. It is it goes right along with militia or tricknology, okay? Playing the game, okay? 52 blocks, all right? Same thing. All of this is governed by Ngolo. So when we start talking about it, it's just how you manifest it. Capoeira has headbutts. Capoeira has elbows. Capoeira has knees. But again, as the sister was saying, It's how she play. What you see her do or what she play with you may be different. What she plays or conversates in another situation, because all martial arts is conversation, and you may just not have entered into that level of conversation with someone to get the answer you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It's very powerful that you say that, because I think we do tend to make assumptions, right? We do tend to make assumptions based on what we see on the surface, right? And we don't take the time, especially now in our generation, right? And I'm speaking as a millennial, right? Quote unquote. I'm on the kind of tail end of the millennial, but we're in that kind of microwave generation where we just want things fast, and whatever's on the surface, that's what we're going to take at face value, and that's the truth, and we're going to run with it. And so I do appreciate the understanding that there's depths to the discussion, depths to the conversation, and therefore depths to the level of understanding. My next question really has to do, because Baba, you touched a lot on the energy aspect and on the spirituality aspect. And one of the things that stood out to me about African and African diaspora martial arts is the spiritual component to it that I don't really see present in other martial arts. I mean, of course, you have like Zen and Buddhism that's woven into some of the Asian martial arts, but it's not the same, in what I've seen and experienced, in my short time within the African martial arts. Can, again, this is for open panel, right? So anyone kind of elaborate on that, but how significant is the spiritual aspect to the African martial arts?
I can go at that, but I want to give someone else a chance to speak, because I spoke for a while already.
So I'll just add, and again, I really appreciate both Contramestre as well as Meriti Mfundishi's response to the previous question. Because they said the bulk of what I wanted to say. I just want to say one little thing related to that.
Yes.
Is that, Capoeira, there are many elements. One of the things Dr. Edward Poe, who was, he began to teach capoeira. He was a student of Mestre Pastinha in the late 1960s, and he began to teach capoeira in the U.S. in Washington State, I think around 72, 73. So he was an early capoeira teacher in the U.S. Well, one of the things that he discovered when he was studying capoeira in Brazil, one of his observations, was that every mestre has secrets. Right? Has secrets. And the secrets weren't for everybody. You weren't going to just walk in off the street and learn the secrets of that particular academy, right? Yeah. Secrets were the people who had been initiated into that particular school of capoeira. And so when people make these presumptive statements about capoeira not being a combative tradition, well, it's probably because they haven't been initiated. Because again, just like Baba said, their headbutts, their knees, their elbow, and like Contramestre pointed out, again, the degree to which one is exposed to those things in conversation may be contingent on situation, on context, on necessity. So there's that. But with regards to the spirituality piece, I think with some Afro-diasporan traditions and some African traditions, the spirituality piece is more or less salient, right? With capoeira, there are many elements of African cosmology which are embedded in the art. So, for instance, you'll see people when they kneel before the bid and bow, they'll form this cross shape. They'll do it on their chest, and many people will think that this is a reference to Catholicism, but some people have argued that this is the Dikenga. The Dikenga is the Congo cosmogram. It's the Congo symbol of time that signifies 4 points in time. And it was really Meriti Mfundishi who introduced me to this many years ago. So to him, I'm very indebted for this. But those 4 points are conception, birth, maturation, and death and transformation. Again, conception, birth, maturation, and transformation. Death and transformation. And so some people say that when they're doing this, marking these 4 points, that that's what they're marking. But definitely when we do the Volta del Mundo, when we're walking around in a circle, it's a break in the game. Let's say somebody has gotten taken down, somebody has caught a blow. Well, something has happened as a break in the game. We walk in a counterclockwise circle. Well, the question becomes where and when do we continue to see the counterclockwise circle within the context of spiritual practice throughout the diaspora? And one context, and I'll use a domestic example since we're here in the United States, was with regards to the I'm forgetting that I'm blanking on the name right now, from Georgia, South Carolina. It's right there on the tip of my mind. The ring shout. People walk in a counterclockwise circle, clapping, singing, and so on and so forth. And so you had this counterclockwise circle, which was reflective of this Congo cultural inheritance, which was a fundamental part of spiritual practice in the diaspora. And so you have the reenactment of this process, this conception of time and reality embedded within capoeira. So I would argue that in capoeira, in many instances, the spirituality piece is more implicit. I think there's some elements where it becomes, where it's expressed, when we refer to Ashe, when we, oftentimes the connection between capoeira and certain terreiro, certain houses of candomblé in Brazil. But I would argue in some Afro-diasporan arts, it's a bit more salient. I'll use some like the Afro-Puerto Rican and Afro-Cuban arts. So for instance, Mani, which is Hueco de Mani, which is a sister of capoeira in Cuba. That art, the footwork is palo, is essentially derivative of the Congolese spiritual tradition as it has survived and developed in Cuba. So the footwork is palo, the music is palo. You understand what I'm saying? And also there are many elements of palo cosmology and ontology. Cosmology is beliefs about the origin of the universe. Ontologies are beliefs about the nature of reality that are embedded in terms of the practice itself, how one moves, how one interacts, the type of exchange of energy in the game. There are many elements of palo which are embedded in the game. And so it depends on the tradition.
Wow.
I'd also like to add just also the expression of the teacher, because if the teacher does not know this language, this conversation, how can they pass it on?
Yeah.
Right. If a teacher is passing on information, and how we have it, especially now, because we want to know how to do that move, how to do that. We sometimes miss the mark of why we did that.
Yeah.
And necessarily, not to say true practitioners, but there is a spiritual element of the expression where we may not, it's not choreographed. It's nothing in capoeira is choreographed. You have segments where you have learned a question and answer, a question, several answers. What do I want to happen from that? And then you may choose an answer. And I say all this to say that you may not know why that happened. We sing songs, and a lot of times people do not know why we sing songs, why we sing this particular song for a particular rhythm or so forth. I have gone to events and people have asked me, Amazonas, please do not sing any songs about Orisha. Okay. Because they, at this particular time, their expression of spirituality in one particular event was they're Catholic.
Sure.
And so it made them uncomfortable. So then we go into where Orisha with disguise and secretized to the Catholic, it's like, okay, but there's which door do you want to walk through? It's right there for those who want to see it. Some people may not understand, even some of the simple words, like brother mentioned, talking about Ashe. Mm-hmm. So Ashe, I'll say there's three of them, right? Ashe as in A-S-E, Ashe, Aseo, and so it is, which in our simplicity says amen. Mm-hmm. It happened or it's happening. Ashe, which means A-C-H-E-I, as in I found. It's in Portuguese word. Since like I found, like eu achei capoeira, I found capoeira. But also this Ashe as in the energy, which is very hard to explain when we say, Ashe as in terms of, yes, agreeance. And there's another Brazilian Portuguese word, Ashe, A-X-E, with the accent over it. These are things that are built off of a feeling. How can you explain some things if we are not having a common language of spirituality? Then we just say energy, energy, energy.
So thank you so much for sharing that point, sister. And that brings me to my next question, because one of the challenges that a lot of us have, and I've experienced too, trying to get into the African diaspora martial arts, and particularly as a person of African descent, is it was difficult to find a capoeira instructor who looked like me, right? And that was important to me because I didn't want to just learn the techniques. I didn't want to just learn how to kick and punch or move, that kind of thing. I mean, I had already been doing martial arts for a long time. I kind of, I'm pretty good at kicking and that kind of thing, right? And so I didn't want to just learn how to do the techniques, but I wanted to learn the essence, the spirit that from which capoeira came. And I don't think that can just be passed down just by learning, just like any other martial art, like just learning kicks and punches and things. And I feel like it has to be rooted in that essence, that ashe, right? It has to be rooted in that. And it was difficult for me to find that, certainly locally in my area. And so what do you say to people who are looking to learn that aspect of true capoeira?
Keep looking. Keep looking, because we are out there. For example, like to receive a green card, a visa to come to the United States is not as easy for people who are of darker skin tone due to political confines and issues.
Right.
However, there are some that are still tied to those that know. You know, I am not Brazilian. Let's put that out there. I am an African in America. I do travel to Brazil to go to various sources and trees that can water and nurture and feed me in that way. And thank goodness we have internet now, and we have WhatsApp where we can have video calls and do video conferences that are private now. I mean, but when I remember when my teacher first went back to Brazil for his mother was getting sick, this is back in the time when you had the calling card and I had to call you and give you more minutes before it ran out. So we didn't have that visual aid, you know. But now it's a lot easier to find it. And because we have the internet, you can still make a connection. It is not as vivid as it is being in the same room. However, it will connect you with the right people and the right energy.
I see.
But if someone is honestly interested, I have no problem sharing my information and get someone who is in your close proximity that would be willing to guide you on this journey.
I think that's powerful, and I think that's certainly needed, right, for a lot of folks who have that interest. Absolutely. So my next question really has to do with, you know, kind of the question of why, and this gets into the future of kind of African diaspora martial arts, right? And so the question is, why study African martial arts, right? And so, you know, I think about it from the perspective of if a student comes to you and, you know, I mean, they ask you the question, right? And as school owners, or even just teaching private lessons to students, you know, it is kind of that question of why should I do African martial arts versus, you know, run-of-the-mill martial art, kung fu, karate, MMA, whatever the case may be. And what for you all, you know, and I want everybody to kind of answer if possible, what is it for you that makes African martial arts special that you would tell a potential student or someone who's interested in African martial arts? Why should they do, you know, capoeira or any other African-centered martial art besides, you know, instead of MMA or something else?
Well, I personally would never tell anyone not to do any type of martial art, because I think you should, particularly in the times we live in, you should just train, period, wherever and whatever you can find.
Absolutely.
You know, everyone need, as for our physical health, for our discipline, for our focus, as a rites of passage for our youth, you should just train. Now, if you are a person of African descent, I would say that it's your heritage, it's your culture. There's some things you're going to find out about yourself and your people that you didn't know. You know, every culture had a warrior history and tradition, and they use that in their advancement of themselves as a people and as a nation and as a race. It's just what it is. You know, as I spoke about the last time I was on your show, I think when my father would speak about when the Japanese people were bombed in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he said that they took the spirit of the samurai and they put down the sword, but they picked up the pen.
That's right.
And they went to the boardroom, the schoolroom, and everywhere else, and they used that same spirit, their Budo, to rise their nation back up. So and rise their people up to empower them. There's still discipline in them. So there's some things you find out when you find out about yourself in history and the things that you've done. Our great warriors and Zinga and Shaka and Hannibal and Akotune, and we can go on and name names, Harriet Tubman, and you find out that we have that warriorhood, that valor, that perseverance. You know, I think that's something that will instill some pride in our youth and our community to step up our game and move ourselves forward as people.
Yeah, I'll add, I really appreciate that response. I think that, and as well as the question, I think just like, you know, Malithi Mfundishi said, one is the ancestral connection.
Yeah.
Every time I practice, it's just on my own. Like when I just practice capoeira or kalinda or 52 by myself, every time I feel like I'm communing with the ancestors. Every time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it's to me, capoeira is a ritual of ancestral remembrance. You know, and when I was down there, I was in my basement practicing early today, and I was sweating. And every drop of sweat that hits the floor is like a libation. You understand what I'm saying? After I finished moving, I picked up the bitter bow and started playing. And it felt like, again, just a tool for the cultivation of consciousness and awareness. And so to me, capoeira, as well as other Afro-diasporan arts, are deeply spiritual practices via their connection to connect us with ourselves. And what do I mean by that? For our ancestors, the self was not just you as this isolated individual, but they saw the self as consisting of aggregates, right? So you have the body, you have the mind, you have a heart, you know, but you also have the destiny. You have a part of you that is derivative from the ancestors, right? And so there's a part of you which is the embodied, which is the essence of one's ancestors, which informs who you are. And so when you embrace these traditions, you are embracing, and I would argue, again, consistent with what Baba said earlier, you are remembering a part of oneself, right? A part of one's ancestral past. And so that's one reason. It is a tool, and there's a tool linked to that for the cultivation of the mind, body, and spirit. They are holistic tools of development. And I would argue this is consistent. In my experience, I see this across the arts, certainly all the arts that I do, as well as others that I've been exposed to. All of them have this element. And I think just beyond that, they help you understand the kinesthetic genius of African people. Before I did the African martial arts, I spent a number of years doing Wing Chun, Chole Foot, and a few other arts, all Asian arts, and a few Western arts. And those arts, again, they were good arts, you know, in terms of their efficacy, in terms of how they helped me understand the body and movement and combat and so on. So they were effective tools for me to hone a particular set of skills. But they did enable me to fully realize the kinesthetic genius of African people, the kinesthetic genius of African people, which can only be realized vis-a-vis our own combative traditions. And so there's a lot. And then lastly, I would say, via these arts, you embody the history and the philosophy of our people. You know, capoeira is an embodied philosophy. It's not just a bunch of kicks and escapes. It is an embodied philosophy. Mani is an embodied philosophy. You know, and so you can read about it, or you can embody it. You can become a manifestation of it. That's a very powerful thing. And so to me, they are ultimately tools for the transformation of spirit, which is why I argue not only are they important for us as individuals, but they could be critical catalysts in the transformation of consciousness in our community.
Wow. That's amazing.
I'm going to add one thing.
Please.
Fun. It's fun. Why would you not want to learn, you know, how to honor your ancestors, you know, learn some history, learn some new language with your brothers and your cousins?
Yeah.
Why would you not? You know, and that's a simple answer to me. All of that, and it's fun.
That's right. That's right. So I'm gonna answer that question, because I think for a lot of us, for me, for example, like it wasn't even in my like thought process, you know, like African martial arts for the longest time, I wasn't even conscious of it, right? I didn't even know they existed, you know, for a large part of my life, right? And I had just seen capoeira kind of just in passing, you know. And so I think for a lot of people, it's just not in their consciousness. Like they are it's because obviously like nowadays, so for a lot of us, right? We got into the martial arts because of the movies, right? Whether it's Bruce Lee movies or Jackie Chan, Chuck Norris, whoever it was, we got into martial arts through the movies, right? And we never saw really African martial arts, right? Nowadays, a lot of kids are getting into martial arts through the combat sports, right? The MMA, the Muay Thai, the bare knuckle boxing, things like that, you know. But similarly, right, we don't see a lot of the African diaspora arts in media. And so I think for a lot of people, it's just not in our consciousness whatsoever. And so when we talk about the future of African diaspora martial arts, like how do we, you know, as practitioners, instructors, advocates, how do we, you know, put a spotlight on these beautiful arts that really should be known and practiced by our people?
Well, we did see it, but we didn't realize we were seeing it. We saw that in the fighting styles of the Muhammad Ali's and Sugar Ray Robinsons and the Sugar Ray Leonards and the Roy Jones Jr. Because much of what our traditional African combat systems that came here to North America were absorbed into those types of combat games, primarily into the boxing. So we were seeing it, and then into the street with the slap boxing in the jailhouse in '52 and those things. And it even that Ngolo even transferred over into the basketball with the moves of a Michael Jordan and the Dr. J, the dribbling and the such forth like that, and into the football with the running styles of the Walter Paytons and the Tony Dorsetts and such forth. Dr. Robert Farris Thompson wrote a paper on this before about the African philosophy of movement in combat and sports and games. It talks about how, again, this energy, this Ngolo that's inherent in us, transforms into any physical activity that we do. Physical is quasi-spiritual. You see the same energy inside the church. When his brothers and sisters catch the spirit, catch the goat, this energy transfers into different formats. But in terms of martial arts and combat, you see it mostly in the boxing. Okay, that same Ngolo energy. Now, in terms of how do we get our people into it, we have to talk about it more. We have to do things like this. We have to explain to our people what's going on. We have to be what my father called being martial literate. A lot of the time, we're just talking about the punch and the kick, who can beat who and what style is better, and this, that, and the other. But we're not talking we're not talking on a high martial literate level. Okay, when we're talking about martial literacy, we're talking about principles, traditions, cultural transmissions, things of that nature. We're talking about hopology. How do you pronounce it, Professor? Hopology, right?
Hopology, exactly. Hopology. Hopology.
Exactly. We have to talk about martial arts on a level other than sport and games, but we have seen it in the sport and games here in North America.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Bob. Absolutely. We have seen it. I haven't recognized it. Like, I didn't know just at the time, obviously now I see it, obviously recognize it, but I just think a lot of us, we don't even know, we don't realize it, right? Because we have been so disconnected from who we are and our consciousness so sheer that, there's a lot of work. I do want to open it up for others to answer that question as well.
I just want to say one other piece to that before I pass the mic over. We also have to understand that there's been as we see going on now, there's been an erasure of history and erasure of our memory. So that's why a lot of times we don't realize what we're seeing or think we don't see it. Think it's not here. It's been here as long as we've been here.
Yes.
All right. So we have to keep that in mind as well also.
Absolutely.
You Bob. It is hopology.
Hopology.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts on that question as far as how do we, put more of a spotlight and educate our people on this crucial piece to our culture? Culture is based off of our arts, our history, our languages, our foods, all of these things, our martial arts, all these things make up culture, which makes up identity. And so for me, this is just an integral part of our identity and as my sister Neff would say, reconnecting to our identity as people of African descent. And so, how do we do that? How do we put more of a spotlight on this vehicle for reconnection?
Well, I think we have to have institutions, and those institutions have to support one another. Those individual institutions. Of course, I am the acting CEO of the Pan-African Martial Arts Federation. Myself and my father's comrades who transitioned also, his sons, Mviti Fadishi Talona, and their sons, Hati Kalindi's son, Ramasui, and others, our elder also Tyra Cassell and Fadishi Jahutmis and such forth. We're moving that organization forward. There are other organizations out there. There's the Hamal organization, there's Wakanda. I myself, I go out and promote what everyone else is doing. I'm always promoting on my social media.
I see you out there, Baba.
We have to be ambassadors for this. We have to, again, have institutions, and these institutions have to get along and network and continue to push this, because we, as we see again what's happening, we have always been, and charge, and we're always going to be in charge of our own education.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts? That kind of summed it up, right? Everybody's like,
so he's unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, I was waiting for you, but just real quick, the only thing I was gonna say is, and this is kind of an extension of what Marita Mfundisi said. I think we have to live these traditions, right? You know, and I really enjoyed listening to Contramestra earlier talking about her exploits, right? Because people identify you with capoeira. You know what I'm saying? Like when they think you, they think capoeira. And I think that is a testament of your own longevity in the art, right? And the standard that you upheld in terms of its expression, right? And so I think it has to be like that. And that's like when I go to Brazil, I remember the first time I went to Brazil, it was fascinating to me how like those cats down there, like capoeira wasn't something they did Monday from 6 to 7. Like they lived capoeira, they lived it. You know what I'm saying? And I think part of what it means in terms of making these arts attractive for our people, they have to be living traditions. And this is the problem that we have now. The capoeira and all of our arts, well, not all of arts, I should say, because that would be an exaggeration, but capoeira in particular, other arts as well, they have been, as a consequence of that codification, they have been sequestered to the academy, sequestered to this space where they're taught as martial arts. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because in many instances, this facilitated the survival of some of these traditions. But if we were to go back in time far enough, and I don't mean like hundreds of years, but in some cases, merely decades in the past, we would find that these were living traditions and they were embedded in the fabric of the community. What does that mean? These were things that were being taught in the family and in the community. These were things that were part of festivals, and these were things that were vehicles of spiritual cultivation. Like one of the things, and I didn't mention this earlier when we were talking about the spirituality piece. Like one of the things that's fascinating, like in some traditions, and this is the case in Cocobale in Puerto Rico, for certain events, you have to open and close the event. There are certain rituals involved in this, right? There's certain processes whereby the space is cleansed, the circle is open, and the circle is closed, right? And so when these were traditions of the people, these were things which was in the milieu of day-to-day practice, right? So you weren't just opening and closing and cleansing the space for the sake of the martial art. You were cleansing the space because the space needed to become, maybe it's your house. Maybe you were about to have guests, maybe you had guests over, right? I mean, there were many. So the point is that when these were arts of daily life, they were inextricable elements of the worldview and day-to-day practice of the people. And I think the challenge ultimately is we have to get them back to that point, where these are arts of the everyday life. You're right, where capoeira or kalinda is a part of the rites of passage that the youth go through. You know what I'm saying? Where the type of physical conditioning of an art like 52, you know, or the sparring that is an extension of boxing, or the game of capoeira is a part of how we refine their capacity to resist adversity. These are just parts of daily life. And so that's really the key. We have to institutionalize these traditions, but that doesn't just mean creating our academies and our groups and having classes. That's what we have to do right now. But I think long term, they have to be arts of daily life. We have to find a way of getting these arts to where they are folk traditions, where they are things that are a part of the fabric of the community. And it's there where we won't even have to ask questions like this, because the spotlight will be on them, because it will be a part of the normal way in which we live.
Sure. I'm going to take what they said. I'm going to add one thing, because that's what they did.
Please, sister. Please.
I definitely agree with everything that was stated, you know, prior to. And I would say that we need to embody being the proud Africans that we are. And to be quite honest, with the wealth of knowledge of just the four of us right now, like there's so much more information out there, but just the four of us, I'm not sure how much people charge, but you can't pay for the calluses on my hand. I will accept a certain amount, but you can't pay for that experience. It's priceless.
That's right.
So I walk as a strong Black woman because that's who I'm seen as from down the street. You already see it because I embody it. So when I'm humbled when people see me, they see capoeira. They see the person who is joyful in adversity, is joyful when there's joy around, but always looking at what is the positive side of things in life. And to be able to do that, they're like, Amazonas, why are you so happy? You know, and it's because it could be so much worse. Right? I could be knocked on my bottom looking up at the sky and not know how to get up. Right? There's various different things. but being proud and living it on a life on a daily basis is something that will continue to bring the arts forward, because people will be drawn to light. People are drawn to light. Why do you do what you do? And then we have given a platform of why we do what we do.
That's right.
There was a time, before the pandemic, 30 kids in our academy. They said, bring them to Mama Zonas because it's an experience.
Mm.
It's an experience. It's not just a class. And I need you to help the next person that comes in the classroom. And I'm talking to the 7-year-old, and the next person comes in as adult, but they don't know any better. So you have the experience. You have to teach them. It's responsibility. So I'm responsible to uphold the traditions. I am responsible to teach what occurred in the past so that we don't make the same mistakes and we have a brighter future.
Mm.
Sharing that responsibility with a platform with others that are then held accountable uplifts the community and brings the arts into the future, because we've embodied them, not just on a Tuesday night 6 to 8, because that's what we do on Tuesday night 6 to 8. Bible study on Wednesday, it's in 24/7. This is something that you are. I'm humbled again. I was walking in Brazil in August in Salvador, and every turn I walking, and I'm just like, Amazonas, and I'm like, do I have something on? That's like, because you represent, but I'm like, how do they know? And through the internet and the work that you do, it speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Senegal, leaving the island where Africans were free, people were enslaved and conditioned and prepared for slavery. I saw a bidding bow. Oh, a bidding bow. The young man jumps on the boat. Elibe Dodge. It's all day. It's not what I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's I have breath in my body. That's how we bring them forward. And this will hopefully inspire someone. My master Sigano, who was the first person to, shameless plug, first person to bring capoeira to the New Jersey area. As Mestre Gelon spread capoeira throughout the world, traveling as a dancer. So we all come into it for many different reasons, but we all say for the love of it. So someone might be attached to the history. Someone might be attached to, I entered it because I said, why are all the women over there and the men over there? Because the women were selling t-shirts and being hospitality and so forth. I said, what's so hard? I want to do both.
Mm-hmm.
So the inquisitiveness is what attracted me. And then I realized the history that I was learning, this is the same thing that I learned. Some of the footwork. In this West African dance, because I studied with Mama Zulatifa Zahiatu as well, is the same dance. It's the same footwork. And my teacher was drawn to me. He said, tell me more. I need to know why I do what I do. And these conversations build us both up so we can build up a future. So I think it's embodiment, but 24/7 embodiment.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, people say, I go to church on Sunday, but you have a problem. You stubbed your toe on Tuesday and you're like, I need to go to church to go fix it. No, pray for yourself. Embody it.
Wow. I think, that's amazing. Anybody have anything else to add? I had one more question. So,
I would say, also speak and support the elders who are living the tradition now, because that's when when again we have living libraries among us. And you know what they say about what happens when we lose an elder, right? It's like the library has been burned.
Yep.
So and we've lost some, quite a few in the few years. And we're lucky to still have, and now I'm speaking to myself. We're lucky to still have Mr. Michel Grimes alive with us still. I need to get over there and see him. Let's support these elders and get as much information up that we can get out of them while they're still here.
Sure.
So really, my last question really is just I want to know how we can help, right? So and really, I want to make sure I get everyone's info, Cash Apps, PayPals, whatever method we use. I want to make sure everybody gets some money this evening as we're recording. So I'm going to make sure everybody gets a Cash App or PayPal. That's just how I roll. Okay. You guys invest in me, I invest in you. That's how I am. And I want to make sure my audience does the same thing. And so please, if you can just shout out, I know we've got a couple events coming up, up in New Jersey. And I know you all are doing online, lessons, whether private lessons or otherwise. Please, if you could just, kind of give the audience a feel for what's upcoming and how they can get involved in either learning from you or get involved in some of the events you have going on. So I'll start first with Baba, because I know we've got an event coming up at the end of April, if I'm not mistaken. Baba, can you elaborate on that?
Yes, Mr. Koblamas is coming to the U.S., but I'm going to let the country master start, because she's going to be hosting him first when he comes to the New Jersey area. But we're hosting him together, but her group is going to be hosting him first.
Yes, we are together excited about the arrival of Mestre Cobra Mansa. So we are living the dream of providing platform for our elders who have done the study, who is the walking library, to come share some of his life experience with us. And that will be on Friday, April 25th in New Jersey. If you'd like to contact me, again, Contramestre Amazonas on Facebook or on Instagram, and also Grupo Liberdade de Capoeira on YouTube is an easy way to follow us there. He's going to be witnessing with us and teaching and guiding us on Friday night. We'll have him for the entire weekend, because we are going to go then on Saturday to celebrate and watch his documentary. And I would not even just say a chat and chew, but it's going to be more than I'm so excited about it. To kind of put into words, it's something that, I mean, I'll still fan out, about to see his work and to see it in live here in New Jersey. We will then go to New York to visit Mestre Jean Grange at his academy, as he's a 96-year-old running his own academy. Yes, it opened those eyes, exactly.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
Running his academy, still classes. He will stop the harder and get up and say, you need to move like this, you need to sing this, and so forth. So living, teaching, and to being in the presence of these elders is going to be something that's monumental. It's something that it's not that we don't come by this every day. And hopefully that would inspire you to then return, because on May 10th, we'll also have our very own group, Grupo Liberdade de Capoeira, is going to celebrate the 33rd annual Batizado and Choco de Cordel, which is our belt changing ceremony. 13th under my direction, but it will be an honor to have and privilege to have you come to witness, watch, support the transfer of information and the inspiration of youth and people of some seasoned time to continue with the art of capoeira.
So family, go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
To add to that as well, Mr. Cobra will be in Puerto Rico from the 18th to the 20th. April, of course, here in New Jersey, New York, 25th to 27th. And Orlando, Florida, May 2nd to 4th, and in Miami, Florida, from the 9th to the 11th. While here in New Jersey, also for the 26th, which will be the film screening, conversation, and gathering thing that we were trying to describe. We couldn't find great words for it. It's the experience. You can contact me at infodishikhalilmasi@gmail.com to put more information on that, or on Facebook, Khalil Masi, Instagram for Khalil Masi. Also, I want to mention that this is the 40th anniversary of the Pan-African Martial Arts Federation officially gathering, which happened here in East Orange, New Jersey. And so we have some things coming towards the end of the year that we're going to be putting out soon. So stay on the lookout for that as well.
Thank you, Baba.
So thank you, Brother Rob, again for hosting this wonderful conversation. So I'm in Chicago and teach capoeira on Mondays, 6:30 to 7:30, and teach Afro-Diaspora and Combat Arts on Wednesdays, 6:30 to 7:30. So Mondays capoeira 6:30 to 8 actually. I'm sorry, and Afro-Diaspora and Combat Arts 6:30 to 7:30. So the Afro-Diaspora and Combat Arts is a mix of things: a coco ballet, Mani, Afro-Puerto Rican Kalinda, 52 blocks. So it's a number of things that we did with that class. And of course, Mondays, Capoeira Gold something to Kuranji. Anybody looking to get in contact with me, you can go to my website, which is H as in house, Z as in zebra, W as in world, martialarts.com. Again, HZW martialarts.com. And there you can get some information about me and the different arts that we teach and so on. And I should say, and you can also, I'm on Facebook and Instagram and X as Kamal Rashid. So if you search me, I'm not hard to find. Usually in my description on each of the sites, I talk about the arts. Only event that we do have coming up for certain that I want to just shout out is the 52 Blocks Federation Convention, which is August the 16th. So August 16, let me make sure I got that right. No, I'm sorry, August 17. Why am I saying it wrong? August 17, I wrote it wrong. So August 17 in Harlem, New York. So August 17th, Harlem, New York, the 52 Blocks Federation Convention. And you can, if you go to my website, I can put you, you can go to the 52 Blocks Federation channel. Professor Mo shares more information about how you can get into contact with me, or you can reach out to me and I'll put you in contact with him. So again, thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do want, if possible, for you all to share. Now, keep in mind, guys, we're going to put all this stuff in the description below. So don't, please write it down. But yeah, check the description of this video. I'm going to make sure I get everyone's contacts, links, all that sort of stuff in the video description below. So it's super simple. You can just click, go, email, contact, reach out, and get more information about any of the amazing events. But this is what we got to do. We got to support these events because they're phenomenal. Now, my other question is, because I know, so I trained. I was just in Chicago like 2 weeks ago with Dr. Rashid, and it was a great experience, brother. So first of all, thank you for that experience, and the first time we actually got together in person, phenomenal training. I felt like it was like drinking from a fire hose because it was just such a wealth of information and knowledge, and so many things, so much beauty in the arts, and I just took so much away from that experience. So I just want to let you guys know, first of all, that it is an experience. Okay. When our sister was talking about, she don't want to just teach a class, but they want to have an experience. Like that's what we're talking about, is an experience. And so if you haven't experienced that with one of our instructors here who's on the panel, because everyone's an instructor here on the panel, so please reach out to them, right? Ask them, see if you can set up a time in their schedule to do an online class. You may not be in their city or town, but maybe you can do some online, online Zoom, WhatsApp, whatever the case may be. I'm sure, they'll be open to training with you all. Just please reach out to them for information about that. I do want to also get you all's, payment. Any way folks can send you cash apps or make a donation. If not, that's fine. But I certainly would like to make a donation to you all. But please, if you can, if you have a cash app or Venmo or PayPal, whatever, please let us know. Otherwise, I'll get that from you at the end of this video and make sure I get some funds over to you all for being on the panel this evening. Nobody wants to get paid.
And I appreciate you pointing that out, Brother Rob. It was great connecting with you. And I do teach private lessons. I teach them in person. I teach them on Zoom. And the private lessons are great because it's, we can take a deep dive, especially in terms of what you want to do, right? You come to class, you get what I'm teaching that day. Usually I customize it, but it's, usually what I'm teaching. But in the privates, we take a deep dive. So you told me what you want to do. That's what we did. And I was concerned. I was like, this is a lot of information.
It was a lot. I was like, oh my goodness. But the biggest thing that surprised me, and I'll share this with the audience, that we were training together. The biggest thing that surprised me was just and I told Dr. Rashid this as well, just the sense of rhythm, right? We hear about it, but I don't know what it is about me, but I got like 2 left feet. So I'm not, that is not as, it's natural when I relax, right? When you relax, it's natural, right? It comes natural and you let it flow. You let that ashe be present within you. And so, but that's the biggest thing for me that I kind of took away was just the spirit and the essence of our diasporic traditions. And so that was just an experience for me. Like just the experience was more significant than like an individual technique or something, you know what I'm saying? It was a total experience. But anyway, Dr. Rashid, please continue.
And I appreciate that you said that, because that rhythm piece, to me, it overlaps all the arts. Like there's this principle of rhythmical unity. And I'll be honest, disclosure, my sense of rhythm was greatly enhanced by capoeira. Greatly enhanced. My sense of rhythm, agility, balance. I was a martial artist, so I had some of that already. You know what I'm saying? But capoeira turned all of that up, and also proprioception, like my awareness of the body in space. All of them. I mean, there was so many things, and I could give you a whole list, because I would say this really, really quick. When I think about martial arts in Afro-diasporan arts in particular, there are primary, secondary, and tertiary bodies of knowledge. The primary body of knowledge is the technical knowledge that you derive from the art, the kicks, the punches, what have you, right? The secondary knowledge, and this is art like capoeira, ends up being things like the music, right? And so for many of these traditions like Coco Ballet, Kalinda, the music, and so on, that may be the secondary body. But the tertiary body are all the things that are derivative of the practice, right? How it improves your awareness of the body, how it improves your balance, how it improves your rhythm, how it improves your coordination, the flexibility. And so they're really rich and powerful traditions. And anybody, I'm always welcome to people who want to donate. My Cash App is, and if you go to the website, hzwmartialarts.com, and go to current students, there's several options. Cash App is $ Kamal Rashid, just like you see my name below, $ Kamal Rashid. But you can also go to my website. I think Venmo is there, PayPal is there. So again, hzwmartialarts.com. Again, thank you.
To build off of what Robert Kamal said, I heard it once that capoeira is like a virus that just infects everything that it touches. And it transforms it. Again, that's that Ngolo I was talking about earlier, that just transform whatever we do into its own new thing. So I give testimony to that as well. I was kickboxing when I began to go over to Mr. Jagranji, and we were already within that mode, having contact with Shalom Vera. But then when it went to Mr. Jagranji, it just changed everything up and gave it a whole new vibration. So capoeira is in everything I do, no matter what system I study. So for myself, I would rather people support the events coming up, more so than myself. So Khalil Masi 1 on Cash App. Khalil Masi 1, the actual number 1 on Cash App. For if you want to come to the event and on the 26th in New Jersey at Refile Inc. In North New Jersey, film screening, conversation, meet and greet holder with Mr. Compliments and Contumaste Amazonas as well. So
I just want to foot stomp that. So family, please try to make it to that event in New Jersey. If you're anywhere in the area, can be in the area, have a way to get there, please be there. This is like once in a lifetime events, right? And so in my martial arts journey, in my training, anytime I could get somewhere to train with the masters, that's where I'm gonna be. You know what I'm saying? Like that's where I'm gonna be, because you may never get another opportunity, right? You hope so. But you just never know, okay? You just never know. And so the opportunity, the door is open right now. Please take advantage of that if you're able to.
Can I just add one thing real quick? I want to, because again, one of the things that I always encourage folks to do is just study. One of my teachers, Maestro Miguel Quijano, he has 2 very insightful books. One was just released, Sons of War, Coco Ballet and El Wigo de Mani. The first volume, Sons of War Volume 1, I want to say came out last summer, but Sons of War Volume 2 just came out days ago. So Sons of War by Miguel Quijano, Quijano. You can get it off of Amazon. I would strongly encourage you to check him out again. He's dealing with the arts of Puerto Rico and Cuba, but you will see many, many, many parallels across the gamut in terms of Afro-diasporan arts, principles being reflected in those traditions, and many of the things that we talked about on this panel.
Thank you, brother. All right. Yes, Bob.
Continue, Mr. Did you want to say anything?
Well, sure. Just to add, since we're talking a little bit about money, and my children don't have jobs, but I never turn them away. So if you have a few pennies, it doesn't have to pay for an entire event, but it helps to get them fed, and T-shirts and memorabilia, so they can remember that they were part of something that will once be considered history. and they are pillars in the community. So our Cash App is $ Amazonas JB, because my name is Jonna Burton, right? And our Venmo is Amazonas -JB. So again, consider that you are continuing the art through children and adults who are less fortunate. So if you cannot physically attend, it would be an honor and a privilege to allow someone else in on your dollar. And we consider that they are then responsible to uphold the legacy and the history. And trust me, I will let them know that. If they have the time, that would be great.
Thank you so much. So family, please support, right? It doesn't take much. Take 2 seconds to just send something, send anything, right? Whatever you can, please donate, please support our panel of instructors. You know, like I say, I'm definitely will. As soon as we hang up this call, I'm gonna go ahead and take care of that right now, because those that invest in me, I want to make sure that I invest back into them. And likewise, if you receive value from this panel discussion tonight, which I certainly have, please contribute something and support the incredible work. We have to support our elders and our instructors who are at promoting and holding down the front line in terms of our African diaspora martial arts. So I do want to thank the panel for everything. If anybody has any final words, feel free to speak. If not, I will go ahead and wrap us up. What was that, Baba?
They train, study, honor the ancestors.
Ashe.
Train, study, honor your ancestors.
Ashe.
All right. Ashe. We'll leave it there, family. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
The purpose of our organization is to start right here in Harlem, which has the largest concentration of people of African descent that exists anywhere on this earth. There are more Africans here in Harlem than exist in any city on the African continent, because that's what you and I are, Africans.